Welcome to the People Teaching People podcast. Joining me on the podcast is Emily Lee. Emily and I became friends way back in 1995 when we were both high school students at Pearson College, UWC, originally known as Lester B. Pearson College of the Pacific, which is located on Vancouver Island. The school was named in honor of Nobel Peace Prize laureate and former Canadian Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson. In his Nobel Prize lecture, Mr. Pearson asked, "How can there be peace without people understanding each other? And how can this be if they don't know each other?" Pearson College is one of 18 schools and colleges around the world in the United World Colleges movement. It is an international school where 200 students representing 150 plus countries live, study, and learn together for 2 years. Emily Lee is a registered occupational therapist and board certified behavior analyst. She is passionate about working with autistic children and their families and continues to dive deeply into her own ongoing learning about interventions that can support her clients. Since graduating from a bachelor's degree in OT at the University of Toronto, she also completed her Masters of Rehabilitation Sciences at UBC and a graduate diploma in behavioral analysis from the Florida Institute of Technology. Her family regularly teases her about her never-ending education adventures. Emily currently works as the OT clinic lead for a nonprofit organization in Vancouver called Nurture Society for Learning Development, where lots of fun OTs, SLPs, and therapy assistants provide early intervention for kids with a variety of support needs. She spends lots of time thinking about play and specifically how to support kids in learning how to spontaneously initiate their own ideas in play and initiate new motor and self-care skills. She's a keen advocate for finding creative ways to build supports for kids so that they can find meaning and joy in the things they do every day, so that their families and helpers can support them with confidence, and so that the environments they journey through are kinder, more supportive, and frankly, more fun. In her free time, Emily plays board games, cooks, and hikes with her husband Ryan and teenagers Eloise and Lawrence. She loves summer swims in the ocean and playing in the woods. Thank you so very much for joining me today, Emily. You and I go way back. So we were just chatting before pressing record about how we can't believe we have kids as old as we do now. But you and I met at Pearson College on Vancouver Island as teenagers and high school students way back in 1995, which just sounds crazy. And I was looking back because Pearson College welcomed its first group of students in 1974 and is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, which is wild. But we have coming up, it's not officially, and I tell people this, our 30th anniversary, but I'm like, it's not quite there.
It's not there, no.
And I feel like I want to specify that.
It's actually going to be, by the time we're there, it's actually the 30th reunion of us starting.
Yes. So
very different.
Yes, exactly. So I'm wondering if we could kind of start there. So what was your experience like at Pearson College? And maybe what were some key lessons that you learned there that have had a lasting impact on you?
Yeah, Pearson College was quite magical for me. I had this kind of interesting thing happen with my education where I would go to a really small school and then go to a really big school and then go to another little small school. And journeying to Pearson College was that going from a really, really big public high school in Toronto to this really intimate, small, cozy space, both like physically being on campus and also from the sense of community that you have when you live on campus. And there's only 200 students. And so, so my experience there was really striking. It was a huge change from what I've been doing. Also that feeling of being what I felt like was a leader at home and really comfortable in my zone, totally confident with a friendship group, and then going into this whole new unknown space and not maybe being the most vocal leader person in the room. And so a lot of those experiences were really remarkable. I think that living in the physical space of Pearson College in the woods really made a huge lasting impact on me. My family and I actively seek out being in the woods and spending time outside, and going into that rainforest that we lived in together at Pearson College always inspires me whenever I go back to visit, or whenever I just find a similar space that smells the same here on the West Coast. I still, I live in Vancouver on the West Coast, so I can find those spaces pretty readily. So that had a really big impact on me. And then, of course, today we're going to be talking a lot about the kind of work that I do. And I think one of the key lessons that I learned at Pearson College is really that, there's no one way of being in the world. There's a lot of different ways of being, and finding ways to connect with people and build a community, even when there are big striking differences between you and your worldview, is really enriching and really valuable, and can shape who you are as a person, and can be inspiring and interesting. And so I think, that sense of community that comes from placing yourself around people who don't necessarily think exactly the same way as you do, that should and could be interesting and valuable. That I think was a really big lesson for me. And then in terms of education, the schooling at Pearson College was quite rigorous, right? There was lots of opportunity to feel overwhelmed and stressed and have to work through that. And I think it put me in a really good position to go on and do other formal and informal ways of continuous learning later.
So many beautiful takeaways and lessons learned, and I definitely resonate with everything that you've said. And, as you were talking, I was picturing the first day arriving on campus and that long drive from the
Yeah.
airport and wondering when we were going to get there as the number of trees got to be more and more, and just arriving. And as you said, like, it's absolutely spectacular. It is
Yes.
such a beautiful space and place. And yeah, just all the interesting perspectives, views, and experiences that people
Mm-hmm.
brought. And I have to say, the other memory that immediately pops up for me when you were talking about the academic rigor is you and I sitting on my bed studying for our oral exam for our English course and enjoying some chocolate, and just, oh my gosh, I tell people that I'm like, yeah, we sat in a room and then we flipped over a piece of paper, and then we had, 30 minutes or something to prepare a
Yeah.
20-minute presentation, and we sat across from our teacher and had it recorded on a cassette
Yeah.
that was sent away. Yeah, it's
And
wild.
and not only that, but you had to do 2 years of preparation for that, and that was going to be a huge percentage of your mark.
Yes.
And then also, you did that while you lived in a single room with 3 or maybe 4 other people who shared the room with you, and had to wake up when they wanted to wake up and study as late as they wanted to study. And yeah, that was wild. It was wild
It
to
was
have
wild.
roommates.
It
And
was
also
wonderfully wild.
wonderfully wild, and also great training for being flexible and adaptable. And
Yes. Oh my gosh. It really is, right? You think back and you're right. Like, just that, the wonderful opportunity there, the pressures that came with it, the people around us, like, just so many
Mhm.
um amazing things learned from that
Yeah.
experience. So much to be grateful for. Now, I'm curious, and it could be Pearson related and beyond or before, but a little bit more about your story and experiences or influences that led you to pursue a career as an occupational therapist.
Certainly. Well, actually, some of them do connect to my time at Pearson College. As I was figuring things out in high school, my mom had been working with occupational therapists in a hospital based setting. She just reflected back to me that there was something about that profession that seemed like it was a good fit for me. And, sometimes our moms know us best. And it turns out that she was right. She put me in touch with an occupational therapist who worked at Sick Kids in Toronto. And I really loved what she was doing. I was quite fascinated by it. And I can't remember if this was slightly afterwards or slightly before, but also in our second year at Pearson College, we had these project weeks. And one of our friends, Kumi, and I came over to the Lower Mainland in Vancouver and went and job shadowed an occupational therapist and a speech language pathologist in a child development center. Actually, so also very much in line with what I do now, which is pediatrics. And I really loved what the OT was doing. And so I kind of marched into university thinking, hey, this is what I should pursue. And I was pretty straight and true. Let's get right down to it. So actually, that's not totally true because I took a year off between Pearson College and going to university. And that was quite an important year too. I volunteered at a school for the visually impaired in England for a year. And it turns out that much of what I was doing as a volunteer was occupational therapy. Like I was helping kids learn how to explore the world, how to become more independent, learning how to bank, learning how to go and buy groceries, learning how to ride a bike, all sorts of wonderful things. And I think that year kind of confirmed for me that I liked that space of being a helper, that I was curious about learning alongside kids. So I marched right into university and did my bachelor's of OT. And I was in the last graduating year of the bachelor's degree at the University of Toronto. It's since become a master's degree requirement. And, I haven't stopped learning. I went back and did my Masters of Rehab Science when I had little kids so that I felt like I could keep on learning. By the time I was 24, I was working as an occupational therapist.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a first-year teacher at 24.
Let's just get right to it.
Let's just get right to it. But I remember standing in my classroom thinking, do they know that I'm not maybe 100% sure already? And they're going to send all these children to this classroom.
Oh my gosh.
It was fun. It was fun. But that's amazing.
My first year of practice, I was in a high school and I was in the staff room photocopying my notes because you still had to handwrite notes then. Yeah. And a teacher scolded me for being in the staff room. She thought I was a student.
Oh, no. No, I'm not.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm the school occupational therapist.
Oh, that's amazing. She must have loved that.
It was kind of funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have that as a teacher, but as a student teacher, the class was going on a field trip and I was sitting with the students and mom came up to me and asked if my mom was also volunteering that day. Nope, she's not. But that's okay. That's okay, right?
Yes, of course it is.
And this is why we're not old enough to have teenagers.
No, of course not.
Exactly. So I'm curious if you look back even further, because I think about when I was in grade 2, I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I loved my grade 2 teacher. I just thought she was the greatest human in the world. Do you have any childhood experiences from when you were younger that you can kind of connect back to what you do now?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to my parents and the kinds of people that they are and the experiences that we had together as a family. Both of my parents really taught me kind of interesting and pivotal things that have helped me become an occupational therapist and do what I do. My mom was born with a facial difference. She has too many blood vessels in one part of her face and has gone through a lot of different experiences in relationship to that. One of which being that she started a nonprofit organization when I was a young child that was called About Face. And she helped families like herself with children like herself or adults who came to a facial difference at a later point in their life, perhaps because of cancer. But she created a space for people to connect and talk about how to advocate for themselves in the world and how to navigate medical systems and all sorts of complex questions about how you perceive yourself and how you present yourself in the community. And so, from a really young time as a child, I was exposed to lots of people who were very different and also were very much like me and my family. And, my mom created a big community and a sense of connection with people that came to our lives through those experiences. And she also is really adept at making people feel at ease, finding connections between each other. So, I had a wonderful role model in my mom, and that paved the way for a lot of things that I do today. And in my dad, my dad is really someone who believes deeply in experiential learning. He wanted to create opportunities for us in our childhood where we could just go and experience and do the things for ourselves and not necessarily be told exactly how to go about doing it. And that's something that's really important, I feel like, in my practice now, that I want kids to get hands-on and figure something out for themselves and not have to be told exactly every step what to do and, have all these demands placed on them in rapid succession. That some of the learning that we need to do is to just go out into the world and do it and try it and be brave. So I had a great childhood. I had all these wonderful people around me who created opportunities for learning. And I also had the kind of childhood that was just deeply about play. Like, we played outside a lot every summer, through the winter, big snowy winters. Like, we just played hard and enjoyed ourselves and had to muck around and figure out how to get along with the neighborhood kids because you were just shoved outside.
There's so many things I hear you talking about there, like the experiential learning piece and the figuring things out and community and connection. There's such a big part of learning, like be it informally, like through experiences that we have, or then also in those magical formal learning experiences, those things can happen too. And you've done a lot of formal educational learning along the way. And I'm wondering if you, in that part of your learning, had a pivotal experience or something that really deeply influenced how you approach and work with children.
It's hard to pinpoint one. One experience that I think was really interesting, one of those moments where my educational setting shrank a little bit, was in grade 7 and 8. I went to an alternative middle school in Toronto that just had 50 students. So it was like 25 kids in grade 7 and 25 kids in grade 8. It was super tiny. And a lot of the focus in that program was that you were doing education in these kind of 6-week chunks and modules. And you had to sign a contract with your teacher that said, I'll accomplish this. I think I'm really good at math. And so I want to do the grade 9 math curriculum for this algebra thing or whatever it was. But actually, for this other course, I want to slow things down. I think I'm struggling a little bit with this part of my education, so I want to slow it down. I remember being kind of terrified and horrified that this was something that we would have to do, that we'd have to go and talk to our teacher and negotiate these things and, figure it all out together. But actually, over the course of the 2 years, it really fit. And it really built my confidence and my ease in knowing that I could go to my teacher and that they would listen and they would say, right, well, yeah, okay, let's make you move faster in that space. Or it's okay to slow down and take your time with this learning. That seems like a good idea for you. It was just a really interesting kind of experience in order to kind of launch me into other things later. Because really, you think about high school and university, there's so many times when you have to go and ask for help, or you want to speed something up, or you want to really slow something down, or you're not sure what to do. And being taught formally that my teacher was a person that I could and should go and negotiate with was really important, I think. We're all supposed to make mistakes and have to do hard things and go and figure it out. I think that was an interesting experience, something that really helped me.
Yeah, it can be hard to ask for help or to self-advocate and to put your hand up or kind of speak out and say, oh, like I'm not understanding, or to kind of make that learning experience really fit well for you and to get the assistance and support that you need in the ways that you need it. So that's a fantastic piece to kind of be a part of your learning, because it's a hard thing. It is a hard thing to do as a young person, even sometimes as an adult, right? Like just being, I don't want to bother them, or I'll probably just be able to figure it out. But there's no harm in asking the question. And chances are you're probably not the only one feeling that way too.
Oh, absolutely. It's something I actively have to remind myself regularly that I can ask for help and that I don't have to
Yes.
figure something out all on my own.
Yeah. As I Google in YouTube and I'm like, who do I know that I could just ask this question? It would save me so much time. I must know somebody. Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, that's a good reminder and such a great thing that you had that opportunity in school. Now I have to ask you because you mentioned that some people just in some of the exchanges we had before that some people aren't really familiar with what occupational therapy is and what an occupational therapist does. So before we sort of talk more about your journey in that field and the work that you do, probably a good idea to get some clarity on what
Yes.
exactly, Emily, do you do?
Yeah. So, occupational therapists work with people of all ages and stages. My examples are going to be naturally focused on working with children and families, but occupational therapists are interested in any and all the things that someone might need to do for their daily life. And a conventional perspective on that might be that it's all about return to work or those kinds of formal occupations that we most comfortably think of. But occupational therapists, and in fact, occupational scientists, think about things in a much broader way that, your occupations are all the things that meaningfully occupy your life and that shape the person that you are and the things that you need and want to do in order to be in this world. And so, occupational therapists very broadly are very interested in helping people do the things they want to do. So for children, that looks like play, helping them figure out play, self-help skills like learning how to sleep well, eat, how to toilet, how to dress themselves, how to do chores. Looks like really deeply understanding their motor skills and helping them figure out how to move their body in ways that they need to in order to do those things that they want to do or that they need to do. And occupational therapists also spend a fair bit of time thinking about the sensory processing world. So, all the things that your body's experiencing and helping you navigate those experiences so that if the world feels too loud or too quiet or too boring and sedentary, that you can go and find the ways that your body needs to move and that we can support you in finding ideas that will help stretch your participation so that you can go out in the world and learn and do.
That's a fantastic explanation. And,
Mm.
I think we could probably all use a little bit of occupational therapy. Like, I struggle in really long meetings. Recently, I had a meeting that was way too long, and I was struggling to remain actively engaged and
Yeah.
focused. I think it was like 3 or 4 hours. It was way too long.
That's
Way
too
too
long.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was starting to like plan dinner and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, I wasn't very, I admittedly, I apologized. I wasn't very on task. I was in the moments that I needed to be, but yeah, I think all of us, right? Like to be
Yeah.
thoughtful about how we're engaging and interacting with our world and in all the things that we do. Now, the science of learning, of course, I'm going to be curious about that because education is my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And you had shared with me that that really guides the strategies that you use to structure and support the learning of both children and families in your work as an occupational therapist. So I'd love to hear more about how does that sort of influence the work that you do?
Yeah. I think there's so many people that look at learning in different ways and come to understand how it is that we learn and think about ways that we learn in different ways. I think that one of the things that we really think about where I work at Nurture is that we really think about what people need in order to learn. So, the children and the families that I work with, the most important thing first is that they have a sense of connection and engagement with us. And that is really important in the long term, building a relationship with them. But it could even be just important in that micro moment of a child coming into a space to learn with me. I'm going to start by connecting and engaging with them first before I start to try to place any demands, before I try to think about what it is that we're going to go off and do and learn about together in that moment. And I think the other thing to move past that is that as we think about the ways that people learn, and particularly children, I think we have to be really careful and intentional about the connections that we teach children that exist between things. So, on a very concrete level, that could look like the actions that I plan out for my body make things work or they don't make things work. So, if someone always fixes it for me, if, I'm learning how to feed myself with a spoon and someone always picks it up and perfectly poises it and scoops it back up for me and gets it all ready and brings it to my mouth, and I don't have to do any part of that, then I don't really learn through my mistakes. I don't learn that, oh, I had to hold it a certain way and I had to work a little harder at the way that I was scooping the applesauce with my spoon. I have to learn those things from my body doing it, from my body planning it, initiating it, figuring out what the right sequence of those motor actions is. And then, like, what's the result? Did it work? Did it not work? And so I think that that kind of thing is really important when we look at motor learning and building new skills. And then it also works on a cognitive level, because if we can unintentionally create all sorts of disconnected ideas for kids in the way that the adult world works. And kids will grow and learn and make their own associations between things based on the way that their daily life goes. So say a little friend has been coming to see us, and grandparents usually bring him into the clinic, and he's used to riding in grandpa's car. Grandpa's car means that we're going in certain places and we're going off and doing certain activities. And then one day, grandpa's car is in the shop and grandma's car comes to bring us to the office to play with the people at Nurture. And wow, that was really upsetting, because grandma's car means that we're going to the grocery store or we're going to the park. And so, kids build associations and connections between things that happen for them in their daily lives. And sometimes as adults, we don't look at it from a child's perspective. And we have to think, like, well, what have I been teaching them all this time? How did I make those connections for them or not make broader connections for them? Yeah, so I think the science of learning, when we really think deeply about it, it's helpful for us to really be thoughtful about what we're teaching children. Are we teaching them that interacting with people brings joy and fun and curiosity? And are we teaching them that they can have choices and act on those choices, they themselves, even though they might be 2 or 3 or 17? Do they, so those things are really important. The connections that we create, just like on a social emotional level with children, and the ways that we give them access to real life things in their world and get them to do it for themselves, those things are really important.
And I bet there's lots that, as you're building those connections, you're learning a lot from these kiddos and their families as well, right? It's really being open to and having that curiosity about how they're responding to things and recognizing things and putting things together.
Yeah. And we do that when we just try to come alongside kids and come alongside families, right? Like, what are you doing today? What's your space? What's your mood? What are you interested and curious about today? And how can I help you go and explore that and do that? And sometimes you have to be willing to put aside maybe your own agenda of what it is that has to or should be done in a particular way, and be ready to be creative.
Yeah, rather than just forge ahead with the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask and sort of dive into a little bit more that idea about that relationship building, both in the shorter term, but in the longer term as well. So when yourself and then the multidisciplinary team of specialists are that you're working with, I'm sure there's relationships there too. That's a big
Yes.
part of the work that you do. What are some of the ways and things that you think about when you're building relationships with your team, with the kiddos and families that you're working with? And how do you find how those connections and relationships really support the work that you do?
Well, there's so many things that we do in order to build those connections. I think one of the first things that we do is try to untangle what might be perceived as the boundaries between what some of those different people do. So at Nurture, we have occupational therapists and we have speech language pathologists and therapy assistants and other kinds of assistants that help around the office, and people that have a broader background in behavior and analysis. It doesn't matter who you are. You should be able to stop and connect and engage with a kid at the level that they're at. And it should be maybe tricky to see what your disciplinary hat is, because the first and foremost important thing is that you're getting down at that kid's level and you're engaging them at the right communication level, at the right energy level, at the right motor level, that all of those other definitions that we might have stuck in our heads and those boxes that we might have stuck in our heads don't matter so much. You're there in front of a family and a child, and they are a whole family and a whole child, and they should be treated in a very holistic way. So trying to put aside those barriers between the different professions is one way that I think is really, really helpful. I think that we really try to look at setting up the environment so that children feel like they have choice and autonomy. We also, in order to connect and engage, I might try to look at how to make something easier for the child in that moment. Or I might try to meet one of their needs really early so that I can predict, okay, like, wow, mom said you had a bad sleep last night. I'm going to make sure that we spend a lot of time helping you regulate and helping you just be in this space. I think another key strategy that I always try to keep in the back of my mind is to be really generous in my interpretations of other people's actions and behavior and the things that they say, particularly when trying to understand children and their actions. I think little humans are working really hard all day long to connect with the people that are around them. And it can sometimes be hard to do that. And I'm going to try to help myself by being really generous in my interpretation of behavior or things that are sticky, or even the fun, silly things that they do, all of their actions through the day. And I'm going to also try to help the other people in their lives be really generous in their interpretations of the child. So what else could be happening around them that they don't have control over right now that's determining why they chose to act the way that they did? I think those things are really important and pivotal in a child's time as they're growing and learning. So I maybe have lost my thread there, but there's a lot of different ways that we find a way to connect with families and meet them where they're at. Oh, I had one other thought that I was going to share, and that's that, all of the hard things that we try to help the kids that we help and support with, we also try to practice and do for ourselves as adults in the office. Part of my role at Nurture is to support staff and to help occupational therapists on our team learn how to be better occupational therapists, and the therapy assistants how to really connect and play with the children that I support them playing with. And I try to do all those same things with the adult learners that are around me, right? Like, I want them to feel comfortable to make mistakes, to need to take a break to regulate when it's been a hard day, I'm going to take really generous interpretations of things that are happening for them in their day as they travel on the bus, sun with rain and toys laden and all the things that they have to do through their day. And so I think that turning that lens back onto ourselves and the work environments that we create and the kind of connections that we have between all of the people that are revolving around our workday is really, really important. The overall goal is to create a place where people feel safe and comfortable to learn, and that they have value there, and that I want to hear from them and I need to hear from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much of what you said, I think it's just important reminders no matter the space that we're in and the people that we're around, right? It's oftentimes there's more to the story when people are reacting, behaving, saying things, you don't know what they're bringing to that situation necessarily. And
Yeah.
I love your use of the word, like just being generous and being curious about what's going
Mhm.
on for them. Where learning happens is when people feel safe and comfortable, because when you're learning something or changing the way that you're doing something, there's so much vulnerability that comes with that, right? And
Mhm.
in order to be vulnerable, you need to be comfortable.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, comfortable learning doesn't look like high intensity learning all day long. It looks like a lot of the time I'm doing things that I'm comfortable and confident with, and then maybe just a little sprinkling of new learning, right?
Hmm.
That it's supposed to be a small fraction, just a tiny slice of it
Yeah, like
in
that
your day.
class that you sit in and you think, I understand nothing. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to feel like that.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
should feel like, oh, there were these like five things that were
Yes.
just
I'm
brand new,
being
but I had,
stretched. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, your workplace sounds like an amazing place to be. And the fact that there's so much priority given to making people feel valued, making people feel comfortable,
Mhm.
making people feel safe and secure and understood is so key, because people don't remember what they've been taught. They remember how they feel. So, one way I know that you make learning really enjoyable and engaging with kiddos and families is by using creativity. So, your own creativity, but also encouraging kids to be creative themselves and come up with their own ideas for ways to do things and to
Mm.
play. So, how do you feel, or how do you see creativity really bringing meaning to the work that you do and just the activities and things that kids and families are engaging in?
Oh, there's so many different things to talk about there. Tiana, it's such a huge question and I love it. So, I've talked a little bit about play, and I would characterize it as really a key childhood occupation. It's one of the primary ways that children learn, and they learn a lot of really important things through that avenue of learning. They learn about connecting with others, communication, they learn both verbal, nonverbal communication. They learn about their motor skills and the environment around them. And they learn executive functioning skills, those like really critical problem solving and attention skills. And so I think that some of the play based therapy that we do is quite important for children's development. So it's actually not something that we at Nurture came up with. The type of therapy that we're primarily providing, well, there's a big focus on that. That's not all that we do, is something called Jasper. And that's out of UCLA and some wonderful, very bright scientists and learners down in California. Jasper stands for Joint Attention, Symbolic Play, Engagement, and Regulation. And that describes what that kind of play based approach is. So, when we're doing that play based therapy, a child will say at the start of their session with the clinician, they'll enter the room, and there's play set up in the room that is right at their mastered play level, because I want the child to come in and make decisions right away for themselves about what is going to be fun and interesting for them to play that day. And then they take some actions, they start the play, and I join. I come in alongside them and I imitate them. I take turns, I talk on my turn, and I share my joy about what we're doing together, gesturally, verbally, all at the right level for that child's learning. And at some point, I'll bring things into the environment that might give them a new idea and help them expand their play and think about something that's harder in their play. And they might try it. And if they don't, I might model it. And then we go back down to something that's easier and feels more comfortable and confident, because they need to regulate and have a chance to do something that they have already mastered, that they feel really confident about. And literally, one of the most important things is that I'm trying to work on their initiation, that creativity, right? I don't want to tell you what to do all day long. I don't want to tell you what exactly you think is a cool and interesting play action in this moment. I want you to generate it. And that can be really hard. So we'll practice it and I'll support you, and I'm here, and we'll take a break. We need to take a break and we'll come back to it. But at its essence, really just trying to think about ways that a child can initiate that really helps their creativity, right? Initiation can be hard when you don't feel confident, or if the motor skill is hard, or you don't yet have all the words or the actions ready at your fingertips. And so I think we can support children's creativity really well by looking at ways for them to make choices and for us to come alongside.
Now, with the kiddos that you work with their families, I mean,
Hmm.
being a parent in general is an experience full of teaching and learning.
Oh man, yes.
So, with the families of these kiddos, how is teaching and learning part of that experience? Because, I mean, yourself and your team are coming in with some expertise and training and insight and a lens into the ways that you're working with and supporting kiddos. So, as far as families go, how do they sort of get to engage in some of that learning and teaching as well?
Yeah, so I believe in an open door policy, right? Anytime a family wants to be in and hands on in, they can and should be. I also think that my role is not to be the expert, because I don't believe in that model of expert versus follower, leader follower. We are co-creating a plan together. I come to the conversation with a certain set of beliefs or knowledge or awareness and ideas, and so too does that family. Sometimes my role is to listen, and sometimes my role is to prod with questions and then pause and wait and hear from families about what's really important for them. Sometimes I have to do some of the things that are going to foster their ability to initiate and help them feel confident in what they're doing as a family. There's no right, wrong way to parent. There's so many different ways of parenting. And we work with a pretty diverse community of families, and they have taught me a lot about continuing to stretch what I think about ways that families can be. And so I think that at the core of things, I'm trying to create a space where we can ask questions together, where it feels okay and interesting to practice something. If you want to join and you want to practice something that we're talking about and learning together, that's great. I'll create the space for you to do that. And if you're at a space in your learning where you want to watch and just be a silent observer, that's okay too. It's really one of the funnest moments in the last few weeks that I've had is connecting with some families that I worked with for a long time. For example, attending an individualized education plan meeting for a child who's going into grade 1. And I've been working with their child since he was 2. So it's been a while. And in that school meeting, I barely said boo. I just sat and listened. And, you know, I was there holding space and listening and finding connections and really thinking deeply about what the school had to say. But that family knew exactly what their priorities were. They knew such beautiful strategies to share back with the school about ways to foster his learning and connection in the classroom. And I was just there. I didn't have to say anything. They had it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that just sounds like a beautiful moment.
It was really lovely.
Yeah, that's so lovely. Well, and I want to get you to share with me who might be a favorite teacher that you've had on your journey, and why does that person mean so much to you?
Well, there's so many people that I've loved learning with. I think actually probably forefront in my mind right now is my director at Nurture, Dr. Kate Chase. She's one of the founders of Nurture Society for Learning and Development, where I work. And she's a delightfully talented speech language pathologist. And I get to work with her every day and learn from her and question her and prod her. And so I think that she's been a real pivotal part of my learning in this space where we're working together with autistic kids and families. And then, if I look further back, of course, my mom, my dad, our teachers at Pearson College were just so fantastic. I caught an interview on your podcast where the lens was turned on you and you were being interviewed. And I think you identified a really special connection with our English teacher, Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I shared that same connection. He just is such a dynamic teacher and so thoughtful and curious and interesting. And I had the pleasure of him as a house fellow too.
Yes.
And he just had a really calm, deeply grounded way of approaching people. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we were so lucky with our teachers there.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yes.
Yes, and he absolutely was a remarkable teacher for us there. Now, when you look back at your own journey, what would be something you're the most proud of?
I'm really proud of my family life. I have a really good scene at home. I have interesting humans who challenge me and support me and love me. And we together work hard on having a really good family life. So I'm really proud of my family life and the humans that spend time with me here at home. If I turn the camera over to me and something that individually I'm really proud of, I'm proud that I was brave to shake up my work world. I had been working at a child development center for about a dozen years, and I was in the midst of doing my master's degree, and I had challenged myself to take on a management role. And there were just so many things that I was doing, and I was brave enough to say I need a change and I need to do something different. And I took an education leave and finished my master's degree and had a little break for, I don't know, it wasn't very long, like 6, 8 months, something like that. And then I went and asked Nurture to interview me. And I decided to leave the public sector and my safe pension unionized job and go and do something different. And it's brought me such joy and satisfaction and so much new learning. And it just was really the right decision. But I had to be brave to do it. It was a hard decision.
Yes, I can resonate with that one. It's hard to leave the stable job with the pension. Yes. No, it's hard, but it's exciting. I mean, it's scary, hard. It requires that bravery. And then you look back and you see kind of where that took you and all the opportunities it gave you. Mm-hmm.
Huge change and opportunity.
So I know that you love to learn. So what is something that you would love to learn about or something you would love to learn how to do?
I always have this idea that I'm going to learn how to play the ukulele or the guitar. I don't think I'm actually any good at it. And I do love music and I love singing. And, I very easily identify things to learn at work and spend time on that really easily. So I think it would be fun to try to do something at home like that.
Well, will we see you on the Max Bell stage?
25? Oh, I'm not going to be ready. No,
okay.
No. Don't book me yet.
Don't book you yet. What is a book, podcast, movie, or TV show that you've learned something from recently?
Oh, well, I'm going to bounce back to work here because I've been learning a lot from an occupational therapist down in the US. Her name is Meg Proctor, and she has a podcast called Two Sides of the Spectrum. Her jam is amplifying autistic voices, and she does it with grace and curiosity and brings up all sorts of really challenging and interesting things to think about in the work that we do. So I really am enjoying that vein of thinking and challenging myself that way.
And if you could sit down and have a conversation with someone that you would love to learn from, who would it be and why?
Are we allowed to pick people who are no longer present?
Absolutely.
Just go
you can
there?
pick whoever you would like.
I had an occupational therapy colleague and friend. Her name is Colleen, and she passed away a number of years ago, and I really miss her. I miss her conversations. I miss the deep and quirky things that we would talk about. She was a really wonderful and thoughtful kind of person who was very good at helping me question my assumptions and peel away judgments of things. And so I would really love to have another few conversations with her. That would be really nice.
Before we sort of start to wrap things up, I'd love to pick your brain for a little bit more in terms of your words of wisdom. So I always talk about how education plays such an important and integral role in everything that we do. And I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts that could inspire or empower people in their own teaching and learning journeys?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's a little silly to say something so simple, but I think make mistakes. Go ahead, make them, feel them, be frustrated or angry or sad or confused about them, but go ahead and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and be generous in your interpretation of those mistakes for your own self. That's how we learn, and that's how we try new things. And yeah, I just think don't be afraid to make mistakes.
So much good learning comes from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Emily, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories and all your words of wisdom with us today. And if our listeners and learners want to learn
Yes.
more about you and the Nurture Society for Learning Development, where are the best places to find out more?
You can follow us on Instagram. We're nurture.learning, and we have a website. It's nurturelearn.ca. Actually, on our website, one of the things that we haven't talked about is that we actually do have an online forum for families to learn together if they want. And those can include families that don't actively work with us, but they want to come and learn with us. And it's meant to be a safe space for you to ask questions about autism and how to support your autistic child or teenager. There's a description of it on our website. It's called Parent Path.
I will make sure to share all those links and the specific link to that as well in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was so nice to connect with you and to learn from you.
I loved every minute, Tiana. Thanks for finding me and seeking out this opportunity. It's been really wonderful.